You're free now.
Balanced vibrations to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of Astro Quest. Obviously, we're here to give a massive level of information today. Like, I had so much to do this morning. It was like, actually I started about 3 days ago working on today's show because I wanted this to be the grand finale, because we're going to be moving into season 2, and we're going to be doing a little bit of something different in light of the information that I'm assessing and also have discovered and that I'm going to share with you today. I'm just going to basically sum up all of what we've learned thus far, even within the last 3 or 4 years of the resistance site itself being up. So that way, when we go into this next venture, everyone is crystal clear about what we're here for, what we're doing, and how we can assist humanity and exactly how that's going to work. So before I even get started, I want to go ahead and check my sound levels very briefly because I have installed some new equipment. It does look like everything is working properly. There is also a high definition copy of the show being recorded now. So if for some reason on your end you're getting a little breakup or things of that nature, don't worry. We'll have the actual archive copy of this show, which will be in HD, available for you in about 48 hours. So obviously it's a lot going on in the world. We've been experiencing a lot of things. Obviously, you can see the news is always fully active with explaining to people exactly what's going on in the world, but more on a negative connotation. And of course, we look into spirituality, we look into the universities, we look into many different arenas to try to find a different level of information, and all we find generally is doom and gloom. And so today I want to really introduce people to the reward system, meaning introducing people to an actual level of expansion that equals you experiencing more and also not being in fear of pain, because pain does not exist. And so this is definitely the tune for the show. But of course, today is March the 24th. I think they're saying that a comet's supposed to hit the world tomorrow. They just keep coming with it. It's obviously Easter, Semana Santa, as they call it here. And then, of course, in the Israelis celebrate it as Passover. And we're into this holiday of what they call the choosing of the Easter, which is basically a time in which the world chooses what energy that it wants to go throughout the rest of the year with. It actually has the ability to do that. And so we're going to also be showing people how to tune their energies better so they can actually choose for themselves where they want to go, rather than the standard Martian approach, which is, of course, this is March. This is the month of Mars. There's a lot of chaos, turbulence. I believe Mercury is going retrograde. So there is a whole slew of things that are actually going on that people are experiencing, and their emotions just have them everywhere. They're getting tossed about in the universe, but it's really their innerverse. So today, actually, what we're going to talk about is getting in control of all that. But in a real sense, it's going to be quite expansive what you hear today, but very simple. And it's going to break through a lot of what other people are talking about. Even some of my past statements is actually going to make null and void. But you're going to see very clearly why it's going to allow you to progress if you just choose to follow the truth. So, of course, if you live the truth should be within. So today what I'm going to do is obviously I'm going to be on the board. And we've moved into another room because this is actually the area that's going to be prepared for the crew that's coming down to take season 2 and the rest of what Resistance is doing to the next level, because obviously I can't do everything behind this mainframe, but I can do a great deal. I want to talk today about, first, it's obvious that on this planet, the biggest secret, if you think that there's something that is being held back from you, some pertinent information that's going to allow you to expand, and because we as a world have not got that information yet, then it causes us to be the way that we are, you're absolutely right. And you're right because that secret actually has to be about you. That secret is, about you. And that is what makes it so important, because your understanding of the universe is going to be the only understanding and understanding, as we call it, that's going to be important here in a little bit. Because what you've read and what you may have even just seen is not going to really weigh as much as what you experience. And so there's been a great level of misconception in this world that if you read something, especially related to spirituality, that you can come to an understanding of it by reading it. No, you can come to a portion of the understanding, maybe even half of the understanding. But the next part of that completes it is the actual experience. So anyone that tells you, oh, I read this spiritual book and now I understand it gave me enlightenment, that's not the truth. You have to give yourself enlightenment by going through the experience. So reading about something is going to only be a certain part of it. And let me give you a few examples. One of those examples is having labor. When the woman is about to have labor, she reads all of these books, what to expect, what expecting, all these different books to tell her what she should go through and when she's going through her pregnancy and experience. And these books are very useful. They tell you about some of the benchmarks on the way and some of the anchor points. And they tell you all of the different stuff that is necessary for you to know about getting ready to experience something that still, once you get into it, it's going to be totally different than what you read about. So let's give another example. Taking substances, we'll say it like that, mind-altering substances, chemicals, whatever you may think of, taking in something is going to be a lot more different than reading about it. And anyone who's experienced with stuff like DMT or ayahuasca or any of these kind of things know what I'm talking about. Someone can explain to you over and over and over again about what you're going to experience within that actual session, and if it's your first time. But when you finally get in there, you can't even access what that person was even saying except for a brief moment. Meaning there's nothing like the actual experience of substances versus someone either telling you about it or someone writing about it. So that, again, I'm going to have to drill this home today because it's going to let you see how in many cases everyone is telling the truth. And I'll show you that later on. Everyone is just, when they're talking, are talking about a piece of the truth, but they're not talking about the whole truth, and we'll explain that. So we have another thing, the ET encounter. Some people have seen extraterrestrials. Some people have seen at least extraterrestrial craft. And we have a million movies and books about this. But of course, if something shows up in your backyard, something's running through the underbrush, it's not identified as far as a 5-based creature, meaning it's not a dog or a deer or anything else, and you can't identify it, it's going to be totally different than you reading about that actual experience from some light worker that says, namaste, the ship landed in my backyard, I went in, it was cold, they put me on a table, okay? So all of that is still going to only get you a certain level of understanding about that experience. So let's go to another one. Well, actually, I'll go to one more. Taking a trip. taking a trip somewhere. Let's say, for instance, you want to go to Paris, okay? And many people had this desire, especially when they were younger. And they read all these books about Paris and how it was, and they seen even all these photos about Paris and how it was experienced by someone else. Someone even commented on the food and the taste. It was tart. It was sweet, bittersweet to the taste. You see, all of these are just words, though. If those words cannot be converted back into the experience in the actual thing, then it's actually synthetic. And this is where we're getting to a major cross point, which is basically the gate in between this dimension and the next. But the actual cross point between what is actually synthetic and what is real. So I want to talk to people today about learning spirituality, because learning spirituality has nothing to do with being spiritual per se. It's a part of being spiritual, but it's not the whole thing. To be a spiritual person, you have to engage in spiritual practices. You have to get into the modes, the conducts, and the creeds, and the vibrations, and the frequencies associated with what you're trying to do or attempting to do. Reading a book about it becomes just as effective as everything else that I've just mentioned on this list. It means that you'll get a really good insight, but you won't get the actual experience, and that's a fact. So what's going to be demarking a lot of what's happening in of what you're seeing in the world is the difference between, especially on a spiritual level, those who have really had the spiritual experience versus those who are synthetic and are simulating the actual spiritual experience. And hopefully we can encourage those individuals to move away from being synthetic and go into the actual experience themselves. And that's what season 2 is going to be about. So I want people to know now that an artificial womb has been created. And some people will ask, well, how do you come to such ideas? And I'm going to give you a very, very concise example of that artificial womb. Let me get my switcher going here. Actually, I need to cut on a device that seemed to auto shut off itself, even though it has been instructed not to auto shut off. Okay, Okay, obviously it's acting like it wants to come on. Everyone just give me one moment. I'm just getting our live display open here so that I can see exactly what you're seeing. Okay. All right, here we go. Yeah. Now, synthetics. Synthetics, which have come to your world, emulate every single thing that nature does. Doesn't do a very good job of it. It is inorganic, but if you begin to be trained to actually utilize these things to actually displace the original, then you can in fact become synthetic, and we'll talk about this. The eye, which you can see there on your left. Actually, let me make sure the eye, you see it. I have to adjust to the camera and how it's pointing at me. So the eye, you see, is the same as the camera. Now, obviously, there is a limitation to the physical eye that most people are aware of, is that if you get a 100, 200 millimeter lens, supposedly the eye can't see that far, but it actually can. When the rest of the body is working properly and the frequencies and nodes are plugged in properly in your system, then when you need to see even far infrared or ultraviolet, the eye knows how to adjust its spectrum and utilize different tools to see that. It may go into the frontal lobe and actually try to project something like sonar around something so that you can see it. So there are many senses that we have that give us the ranges far beyond what one camera has been able to accomplish. Generally, you have to get at least 10 or 20 cameras to even begin to assimilate what the eye can do. Now we move to the nose. Same thing. Smell is something that has to be felt, tasted even. So that is something that a computer cannot do because a computer cannot feel. So what is given to the computer or the simulation is sensors. And these sensors serve to give it all of the responses necessary based on what it just encountered. We move to the brain. Magnificent piece of engineering. Completely organic. The closest that we can come to it is a computer. And some people are again thinking that the Cray systems and many of the faster systems are so much more faster than the human brain. But I'm going to show you today why they aren't. Why they're only calculating something that we already figured out. You can only figure something out one time, and if in truth. And if you go and try to find something else, the only thing that you're going to find is only different pieces of truth, which we call lies. And I'll talk about later on why lies means to lay down. It means to be lower. It means you get half. Lies are always half truths. They involve the conversation about something that generally really took place or the person was really supposed to carry out, but they changed the story to fit the ending they want. Again, we go to the ear. The ear is only a satellite dish, obviously. Excuse me, the satellite dish is only an ear. We have to see that all of the synthetics have never lived up to the actual standard of the organics. So if for some reason in our reality we become more reliant on synthetics, non-experiences, reading about things, not doing them, using other things to see into stuff, but not going to see into it ourselves, then we actually end up in the state that we're in. So we're going to talk about how to remove oneself from the lowered state. This is the next thing. Let me look at my guidelines here. I will show you now that 100% of the heaviest occult symbols in this world, some would like to even think in this universe, only relate to man and woman. That's it. Some people are going to have their bubble bursted right now because they've been taking symbols and pulling them all apart and calculating the geometry and measuring the angles and coming out with all this data. But because you're actually talking still about only a piece of what the human body really can do, of course you would get a lot of variable information. But have you got the truth? So let's take a look. All right. Symbol number 1. The solar symbol. Seen on the walls of every temple of ancient time near you. Somewhere or another, there is a cognate, meaning something that is similar to this, hanging around all temples. Why? Because it's zoomorphied. Back in the day, they understood this. Now, it's become something that we've even fallen down and prostrated to, as we basically fall down and worship ourselves. See, what you're looking at is that orb in the center is a head. Those 2 wings are arms. Those 2 snakes are legs. And that pole in the center is a spine. They will love to run you around the forest of what, when, where, how, who, Alice. What is all of this? And the reason why it serves to work is because we are still, as such complex and enigmatic beings, very difficult to pinpoint and figure out and narrow down to whatever we could write. So you see how we're kind of chasing our tail in a sense that every time we draw a symbol, it's going to mean us. But if we start to try to pick it apart, well, this means something in specific, then there's nothing specific about all is one. Okay, so look at the diagram and tell me if you do not see the same thing. Now, of course, you've seen images of Abraxas. He's even got the chicken head. Of course, this is the same thing with the wings. All these symbols, and we're going to keep going through them here, only mean man and woman. Now, anytime they give you a symbol separate, though, then you'll see a dualistic symbol. So let's go to the first dualistic symbol, the cross. Now, the cross itself represents man. The upright cross represents man with the outstretched hands. It never meant anything else. The reason why it meant that was because there are cross points within the human body, and it becomes the most important part to make up who they are. Is those intersections or encounters that the human being, spirit, mind, body, soul, etc., has, that it makes contact with and that it makes communion with. Every time you learn something, every time you experience something, you birth something. The crossing creates the birth. So in ancient times, if they wanted to show you a symbol, they always showed you, if you need to differentiate in a 3D reality, whether you were referring to man or woman, they turned the symbol upside down when they were referring to woman. And this is the beginning of the demonization against woman. I call it why God no longer has a wife. Why everyone is all confused and divided in the reality, because they're missing their twin flame, as they call it. And it's because this symbol here was always accompanied with another cross that was down lower. That became known as the symbol of the double cross. I should have sourced that here just on the bottom, but next time we'll get it. Because if you saw the upright cross as man, then you flipped the cross underneath and that meant woman. And then you put them together and that created the double cross. So it meant basically an area where something comes together to create communion. Now, if you think that I'm playing that cross is really a symbol of man and woman, now you'll see why they always put man on it, which is the motif you get with Jesus. They hang Jesus on the cross. Jesus is not on the cross. Jesus is the cross. Man is not on the cross. Man is the cross. Let's keep going. The next popular occult symbol. Here it is, the pyramid. Ooh, Illuminati. It's gotten foolish. I've been sitting back now that I'm completely present, because you gather in more yourself as you wake up. I've been in a 3 or 4 year wake up call. So you get this symbol that everyone is in fear of on the dimension. They see Illuminati. I'm going to also show you how these symbols, even the cross, like people fear the cross. It runs away vampires. The solar symbol now, oh, that's an Anunnaki, a Gigi. They're going to, oh my goodness, who knows, the necromongers. You see what I mean? This is what the symbol means. That's not what the symbol means. This is what happened when they confused the symbols. This is the Babel. All of our conversation in the beginning was basically cymatics. It was not verbally reciting sticks. It was actually these tones and intoning and vibrations that came out as shapes that we could see. So when someone else redefines the shapes and makes those shapes even two-dimensional and brings the whole world into a dark age, which is what it just came out of. The world just came out of a 1,000-year dark age. The 1,000 years that they say Satan reigns, blah, blah, blah. That's the darkness of ignorance that just happened when all of our knowledge and information has been misinterpreted. So look again. That eye on top is George Washington's eye. When you look at George Washington's eye and you look at that eye, after you set them side by side, you'll see that's what's going on. So what they're telling you with this symbol is that this is a symbol of man that has now been shaped, formed, and fashioned, because you notice there will always be the numbers on the bottom, which I removed, to make you believe that this symbol of man actually means the Illuminati. And let me explain why. Now, obviously, dead ringer. On the top, there's an eye. Look on the top of your body. There's an eye. They said, no, that's only the one eye. Your third eye then, okay? That's all you have there. But what you have that's so important to get you to see that this is a symbol that only means the human, once again, is you have the bricks. And the bricks, by their interpretation, are the building blocks that are necessary to create this pyramid. And what are those building blocks, really? Your heart, your liver, your spleen, the ventricles, your auditory system, all of these different systems that you have are all of what's working to keep the body going. So take a look again. The only thing that they're saying with pyramids is that that is actually now another two-dimensional, sometimes three-dimensional if you go out into Egypt, representation of man. And guess what? Just like I told you, anytime they show one of these dualistic symbols that only mean just man, the other one, when it's inverted, means woman. And that's why everyone started getting just maybe the epiphany that maybe the inverted symbol, which of course is this, like very similar to how the vagina is shaped, means woman. Well, you're there somewhat, but the inverted pyramid means woman. So you've solved nothing, though, meaning that you didn't come to some major breakthrough of who's causing all the conspiracies in the world, etc. The only thing that you did was come back to yourself. Now take a look at this one. Now we have the upright triangle and then the inverted triangle put together. That's man and woman. That creates a womb. So because all of these symbols start to go 2, 4, you could keep actually making more symbols that are really mitosis. It's something that's exhibited in nature of how it continues to replicate these symbols. So when you really see something like these interlaced triangles, you can actually start to visualize, well, a triangle in itself is just a D. And let me show that. It's actually the delta symbol. Let me go here. See if you can see. You can see over here in this corner. Okay? So, as I said before, a circle and a square are basically the same thing. And when they're divided, you divide this, you divide this, the pieces that make up the half of them become some of the most occult symbols in our world. The half of this circle is the D, okay? The divided one. Deals, deuce, all this means two, dice, etc. The diaboli. So they're half of a circle because they're not complete. They're missing generally the feminine component. Now, same thing with this square. You take half of it, you get this triangle. Oh, the delta. Now delta, that is. And only half. Missing its other component. So what I was saying about the visualizations is that, excuse me, before I erase that, now you'll have to do another thing to be able to fully interpret symbols. When you see the half of a square right here, and you see it make a triangle, then you see a half of a circle and you see it make this symbol here. Now we would try to find somewhere in our world a symbol that looks like this then, if we wanted to actually make it equivalent to this. Okay? And hopefully everyone can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit. And you've never seen this symbol anywhere, so it doesn't make much sense. And you may even lose the trail. Right? This symbol on the bottom I'm talking about. If you're trying to use my theory that half of a square is the delta symbol, which means a triangle, and a triangle means only half of the sex. So let's say this is male and this is female, separate, they are nothing, together they create this womb, right? So you would look at this and say, but wait a minute, this D, when you interlace the D's, that doesn't work. You're right, because there's a mitosis. Something takes place. It graduates even within the symbol, and it changes itself from half to a whole. So when you get two D's and you put them together, you get a whole, of course. But now let's take two of these holes and let's put them together. And then what do we have? The vesica. So you did the mitosis. You brought the symbol back somewhat organic, took it out of the straight lines, and then you actually see that these are the exact same symbols, except you start being able to read deeper into knowledge, though, as far as what that hexagram actually means. Because in itself, it's actually the symbol of an inorganic womb, synthetic womb. Because the wombs don't contain straight lines. Only the synthetic wombs create straight lines. So now you'll see why they use it for communication, because communication is like birth. They use it for everything that they can seem to get associated with it. They always throw the hexagram in there, right? So let's keep going. Because some people, until they see the rest of this message today, they think, oh man, maybe he's a little off. I'm going to show you that all the knowledge here is the only thing they've been doing is making it seem complex. And what's really happening here now is that we're finding out. And a lot of the people that have been hanging around trying to be on the other side by attempting to undermine the resistance are going to have to cease and desist, because they're going to see even today that they're dead wrong. Literally. That when you're dead, it is very hard to see. Clearly. Same thing here. Pentagram. Man, they already showed it. This is why it becomes the most enigmatic, crazy symbol of the dimension, because man is the most enigmatic, crazy being on the dimension. There's no telling what man is going to do next. He keeps and she keeps insinuating that it is other beings and other things spurring them on to act the way they act. But there's nothing else beside us when you really see what's happening. So you see that it's just another side of you wanting to live out and act out. So blaming it on something else to why you act the way you act is not realizing that you want to be in that frequency. There is something about that frequency that you resonate with. And until you decide to cross over the gate and to go through customs, then you'll stay in that dimension. You'll never see what you would call expanse and paradise. And here's another amazing thing. Once you finally do, you'll see that you are able to achieve it here. That this entire reality will metamorphosize into something that you can actually expand in and continue to expand in and grow and see others grow and to feel again. Because the problem with being synthetic is you can't feel anything. Anyone ever start thinking about anyone now asking why back when they were younger, the club, even when they were in a club, it felt like different. Like I was having fun. And then now I'm doing the right thing for myself. I'm eating the right stuff, but I can't seem to I feel. Or back in the day when I was in church, I used to feel like the spirit was there, but now I don't feel anything. It's not because of what you were doing before. It's because how you become now. The things that they've brought into the world since then to now have only served to make you more artificial. You are what you eat. You eat artificial food, you become an artificial being. You don't drink water, you don't be water. Water's life. Your water's chemically imbalanced and pH screwed up and laden with minerals. You become chemically balanced, pH'd up, laden with minerals. You see, whatever we choose to take in, we become. Whoever we think God is, we eventually become that. That's why the best thing that you can do for yourself is to realize universal knowledge, because no matter what dimension, plane, or expanse you end up on and land in, the same rules will apply. No longer will you come spiraling through a world like a falling star, crashing all into this, causing conflicts that cause ripple effects later on in life that you have to deal with. You see what I mean? Keeping it 100% responsible is what I call it. You want to be 100% responsible in this world. So let's keep going. Pentagram. It means phi. We've been running all over it. Phi is the body. You're right. So what happens is that when you try to interpret a symbol like this, you're going to come up with as many variations as of individuals in their attitudes and how they exist on a physical plane. And guess what? Like I told you, there was a demonizing of woman. When you flip the star upside down, it actually means woman. And this is where you get to the symbol that so many people in this dimension see as the demonic symbol, which is the inverted pentagram. It's because they have demonized it, the same faction that is turning everything that means woman into evil. And then hidden why in the Baphomet lore, Baphomet has the breast. Okay? Because they're hiding a mystery of the tradition of fertilization. That's why when you get deep into it, they say, well, Baphomet is a fertilization principle. But the symbol doesn't look like that. It looks like a terrible monster, right? Now you see the trick. The fertilization symbol, or the fertility god, is a fertility goddess. I mean, this is not a mystery, people. We've just been, like I said, run around the forest. Someone is playing games with us, taking away our regenerative principle so that we die. Dying is what you did already when you split from the feminine. That causes death. Splitting causes a temporary stage of what appears like death until you gain that other side again. That's what we're doing here. Let me give another symbol and then we'll get onto this board. Yeah. Actually, those symbols will suffice. Let's go ahead and get to the board. Let me check over my notes really brief here because we haven't even begun. What's going to be happening in season 2 is that we're going to take every single thing and truthize it. We're going to have something called the truthizer. And every single thing that is going on, we simply put the GUI or the actual correspondence to truth. Is GUI means you lay over it. Whatever is false, you put the truth over it and show people this is the truth to it. So, also, let me just look through my notes here really briefly just to make sure that I'm not missing any part of this because it's super important. And let me back off here with the camera. Give you some images to take a look why I set up this here so that we can go ahead and get on the board. Because this is massive. Because what you'll see is that, man, I've been getting played. I've been on timeout. They're showing me all this stuff and telling me it means all these different things, and it just means me. Other variations of me. Then they make it all mystical and enigmatic. This is my word for the day. An enigma. We don't know what it is. Because you don't know yourself. That's what they're saying. They're saying as long as you don't know yourself, then you won't know the meaning and true hidden meaning to any of these mystery symbols. And then when they take woman out and debase her and degrade her, then if they can completely abolish what it was ever like to regenerate, and they could even turn the feminine species itself into non-regenerators, then they can rid us off the planet, as they always say. Then they'll leave the planet. And leaving the planet is, of course, leaving the vibration of being a whole and complete being. I have to move this around a little bit. So this is important because this is what happened. This is how the quote-unquote Jesuits, we smite their face, are keeping things going on. That's the other thing. I'm not being nice with people anymore. Meaning that all the smiling in the face and, hello, how are you doing? Look, do you want to know the truth or not? This is not a democracy. If you come into our network, we're here to expand you. If you don't want to expand, then go to Facebook. We're not going to be playing with people anymore. Truth makes you very serious because it is a shame right now the way that we're living, that we don't have truth. We're living like dogs and pigs. We're fighting and bickering and hating each other, living in unbalanced low frequencies, killing our own members of our society. We've turned against one another. We've turned against the opposite sex. We talk about everyone. Everyone's no good for us now. Every time we have something to say, it's so much more easier these days for people to say something negative about a person than positive. So hard for them to they're so weak they can't pick anyone up. Instead, they kick them down, talking about stuff that's happened 5 or 6 years ago. The past is as short as yesterday. You can change today. So to start pointing out what a person has done in the past, you obviously didn't get that it's nonlinear. And on top of that, as being a teacher, you're going to have to experience everything. Ridicule, all of it. Guess why? Because you're going to need the experience. I want you to read about it. Watch it. No, only doing. So here we go. Let's do something. Let's go ahead and lay out the keys to the INNERVERSE. And let me check. Let me just check the chat box. I can do that. Let me check really briefly just to make sure that everyone's connected. In fact, I'm going to take a brief break here, and I'm going to get some water, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you the keys to the INNERVERSE. Today's show, I don't care how many times I have to go over this on this board, I'm going to make sure you understand this because it's so important. Like right now, what I see happen in this world is a total game. But our world is dying because we're playing this game. There's entities on this planet that, again, only small parts of us that want to isolate themselves. This is why, as I showed you in this symbol of the D down here, that the D is the king now. That's why D became Dios, right? Or Deus. And this is God, right? But the God is the king, because the king deified himself in this world. The king of this world wanted to be worshipped like a god. That was Caesar, that was Pharaoh, that the king of Britain, all of them doing the same thing. This is nothing new. But they are lacking the other part of their principle. So this is why they're always associated with destruction and death. And they bring about such things because they divide kingdoms. Because the original mother that is divided is actually the planet, or the original division. Because when I say mother in this speech today, when I say father in this speech today, when I say man or when I say woman, I mean the same thing. Don't let your mind get hung up on, oh wait, is he talking about the female or is he talking about the male? Because you'll spin in and out of this thing in different levels all the time, meaning that you can come back as a woman, come back as a man, come back as some invisible entity, come back as some eidolon that people are still calling upon. But the key here is to realize what is going on. Gain bearing. So that way you can start to project where you want to be. Beings are already doing this. I found out. I was like, man, how can I not be expanding when everyone else is expanding? Like, I don't want all of these physical cars and all of this stuff. This is ethereal. I've already seen, this is, physical. I've already seen the ethereal. Once you get a taste of it, and that's why I was talking about experience. Once you get a taste of the spiritual experience, all this stuff seems to need to be enlivened again for it to mean something. My family and my children and the people that are physically on the resistance and the ones that I'm in touch with mean more to me than any of my material perishing possessions. That's the way it began, and that's the way it'll always be. But don't expect it to be an end. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment. I want to play a recording for you that I feel is really important. Excuse me, I left my thing here on the floor. But I'm going to play an actual clip from you from a movie called The Master. And not really too much concerned with the rest of the movie. I didn't even watch it, but I saw this scene in particular. And in this scene, let's see what's up with this this device here. And in this scene, he was being interrupted by an individual that did not believe what he was saying on the spiritual level. So I wanted to show you the whole scene because a couple things are mentioned that are absolutely true. And also while I show that scene, I'm going to go ahead and take a short water break. Just want to let everyone know also we're still on the cleanse. We're in the internal cleansing part. It's awesome. More clarity, like you remove the bowel from the bowels, as you'll see today as I lay out the entire diagram. When you remove Baal or the Lord or the evil Lord, and then you reinstall one that is vibrating properly and harmonic, it's just like swapping out a bad engine in the car. Starts to run again. See, they're playing us like a game because they could have told you this a long time ago. As you see, none of this stuff is really complex. But what the secret is that when the serpent, who is here, okay, obviously this is that symbol I was showing you earlier. The serpent is here. It corresponds to the legs, right? But there's two. So this means it's always dual. These are interlacing. And we'll talk about this when we come back. I don't want to get into it now. But just this component of why the serpent became God was because the Lord, or the one that was lower and in division, actually became God. Now, what God set out to do was actually cause a confusion. This is what you see in the Bible. And in doing so, by actually first saying I am the only God, then and this is again a system of belief. This is the serpent brotherhood of Sod. I am the only God. And then cutting off the feminine principle also, which is the regenerative principle. Now God doesn't have a wife anymore. And then again, what you have installed is someone who is instructing you. That's why the serpent has always been synonymous with books, knowledge, right? Because all books and knowledge are pieces of the entire truth. So if someone doesn't write the book to give you the whole perspective, then they're only serving the political agenda of the king, like the Bible is done. So just peep this out. Check out how it's going on. And again, what happens is that if the whole goal then for the serpent to confuse everyone, to get them off of the tree of knowledge, which is their real body, and the serpent came in on or was on the tree of knowledge, meaning that in the mind, you'll see all of the connections right there. But I'm going to get a lot more deeper into it so that it becomes simple. So, all right, so here we are at the board. But obviously you get the point. It's like you're trying to expand everyone into a higher state of consciousness. And then you have these individuals who are still stuck in these old programs from 2,000 years ago. And you notice, especially the religious component is the disarming component. Now you can't even really play games with what's really going on in spirituality, supposedly on the world through religion. Because when they say, oh, well, there's still good principles there. How can something be good when it also contains the lies directly? So then what happens is that the entire part of what is being experienced is corrupted. So we'll talk about that, because in religion, there's a giving up of power. See, what happens here with the resistance is we don't encourage you to give up your power to some name and some being and some entity and some alien and all of that. And because we don't do that, we come under fire. So what happens now, though, let me make sure everyone can hear me okay. Let me check my levels. I just want to make sure. Yeah. So what happens now is that when you even get terms like Lord, use me, okay, this is a part of the prayer in Christianity. You're literally asking for someone to take advantage of you, praying. This means you're literally asking to be hunted. Altar. This means that you're literally asking to be changed. So what happens is that all of the terminology within these external temples is actually configured and plagiarized from none other than the body and nature, because the body and nature are the same. It's only the fools that see it different. And they're called fools because they do things that actually damage their own body and their own planet. So we've all played the fool. That's why I say the fool is a powerful symbol. Yeah, because when it's the symbol of a million, billions of people, then yeah, it's a very powerful symbol. So now you see why the jokers and the jesters and the jacks are always played out in these games that they love to play in the news. You see, like it's one of those things where it's rigged from so many different points. Externally, the only real refuge that you'll have is within. Because externally, everything is subject to fail at times because it's external. When you move into the internal world, you can catch it way before it gets to those points. And let me lower my microphone here just a little bit because I do see my mic spiking. And I do want to make sure I just have some clear audio later on. So I did take the tone down on that just a little bit. So, all right, so let's get into this. Now, here's something that I was really looking at, and it's time to stop playing games. Okay, you've seen one of these, right? Now, I'm telling you that if you are playing this game, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, excuse me, that's 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Obviously, I don't play the game much. 8, 9, 10, 11, all right? I guess 11 there. I'm not the artist, that's Luis and Pablo. So this is the game of time. And when I ask you, are you playing the game of time? Some may say, no, I'm a time lord. I don't age. I'm immortal. Okay. So then can you stay here all day? Do you got somewhere to go later on? You probably do. So that means you're playing this game because you'll say around 7 o'clock, I got to do this. Meet me here. At 9 o'clock, I got to do this. I'll be there. So you're playing Zodiac. The Zodiac game. Okay? It's the time game. Firmware based, meaning that when you start playing the time game, it actually starts to really affect how you appear and everything. As you keep looking at the watch and you're celebrating birthdays and annuals and making rings and shells around yourself and running circles around yourself and celebrating it, you actually are aging because of that. Like my mother taught us when we were younger, I don't celebrate holidays. Like every day's a holiday. I don't get it. So what happens is, when you're on this, whether you want to admit it or not, you're on the Zodiac. So what becomes important here is that you see that this original system of the 12, okay, let me give you some 12 correspondences. Yeah, see the camera's over there. Some 12 correspondences. I'm gonna drop those in so everyone can read them. I love these switchers. You could just put the stuff right in and bam. And then trust me, when everyone gets here to operate this thing, like already, just because of how the knowledge is, you already know that it's gonna be something that people are gonna be like, wow, it took us this long, but man, it was well worth it. Because a lot of people think that it can't be done. But I'm actually explaining things already that they say you couldn't talk about. That's why I like the way that recording ended. These societies who purport you not being able to learn anything are everywhere. They are working around the clock to keep you ignorant by teaching you non-truths. And they love to short circuit the humans. They love to throw in the duality component by just removing the other principle, generally the generative principle. So you read here, not only are there the 12 sons of Jacob, whose name means an arc or a circle, and who symbolically founded the 12 tribes of Israel, another myth, but there are 12 princes of Ishmael, the 12 Olympic deities, the 12 labors of Hercules, the 12 gods of consent, the 12 governors of the Manichaean system, the 12 disciples of Jesus, the 12 apostles of Cyrus, the 12 knights of the King of Arthur and the Round Table, the Zodiac, the 12 brothers of Arvus, the 12 altars of St. James, the 12 shields of Mars, the 12 asses of the Scandinavians, the 12 sacred cushions, and in the Japanese cosmogony, the deity sits, of course, on the 12 cushions. But why? Because who is the deity? That's why I get frustrated at times in the world when I come into a large amount of knowledge first, because I'm like, oh my goodness, here it is again, very bluntly. We are the gods, and now we're sitting on this 12-hour system, which is called a wheel, and we stretching ourselves across this wheel and actually taking ourselves through these death, birth, and regeneration cycles, because we're being told that that is the process of life, but that is the process of time, not life. So they put them both together. They call it time life. Time, life. Okay? So this process that you're going to have to really understand is separate from one another. You can't talk about time and talk about life. Time is anti-life. So let's talk about how this vehicle is set up. I have to put on another video here really briefly. That the body that we're in has at least, and everyone remember I said in this, at least. I'm not giving any finite numbers. Has someone come back and tell me, oh no, there's really 15 and there's an infinite amount of numbers when you understand that what you're actually dealing with. But just to map out the concept itself, you're going to need a couple visuals. And here's one of them. Let me get this queued up. Call it the 12 systems. Twelve systems. All right. Oh, skull and bones. You see, when the fear factor actually starts on this dimension, every single symbol will equal something evil. So you can see it's already taken place. All of the symbols of just who we are interpreted and then misinterpreted. So this is a medical video, by the way. This is not a symbol of the occult. So let me go ahead and get this list really briefly here. What you have is, of course, the skeletal system. You have the digestive system. You have the urinary system. You have the reproductive system. This is just the male reproductive system. You have the respiratory system. You have the endocrine system. You have the lymphatic system. You have the nervous system. You have the cardiovascular system. You have the ligament system. You have the muscular system. And you have the integumentary system. The skin. Okay? So, oops, the switcher cut out here. So you can obviously see that if you have all of these systems, whatever could be more fascinating here? You start seeing the play. When you're awake, you start seeing the play. Like, you got all these systems, you don't even know where this stuff is, what it does. It's magnificent, and you're actually inside of it. This is not just something they're trying to offer you that you can buy. It's not specs, 2.5 gigahertz on the processor, or what I say, dual brain system with circulatory endocrine system already installed. Then actually afterlife software that loads, blah, blah. I'm not selling you something that you're already in. So you see the game here, that if you have an entire universe that is even bigger than the ones that they're describing, because they're just describing. You're not experiencing it, so it's never going to be like the real thing. You're going to be on something synthetic. So notice how, once again, you can clearly see that the adventure is within us. So they said there was 12 systems. There was 12 systems on that chart. Again, these numbers, again, are utilized in order to map out things, and that's the much you can get out of them. So just imagine there's 12 systems then. We just need a template, and that's why all of what you've seen today with the pentagram, the solar system, the cross, all those were templates to just explain to you what was going on with the body before someone started lying. Could have been the lion. The dualistic, but this is the thing. Also, you'll see on the system of 12, because this is now 12, half of 12 is a D, okay? So, but half of 12 actually gives you 12 divided by 2 equals 6. Hee-haw, hee-haw. It's 6. Oh my goodness, the evil number. Now, see how they're going to play the male-female game with you again. 6 is a generative number. How do you know? Because it's actually the symbol of, it's the numerical symbol. This is a 6-sided hexagon. It's the numerical symbol of the generative circle. Okay? But guess what? The reason why it comes out as a hexagon, because it's not organic. So it makes it half. It's just synthetic. It's not the actual thing. It's just the training before the actual experience. So see how this number 6 means divided. But remember, you need this division process in these kind of matrix systems in order to produce more. The man here and the woman here, 6 plus 6 equals 12. And then babies here. Okay? So these two D's, when coming together, make a circle. Okay? So, but now you see why, though, that this can easily be divide. Right? Minus the craziness that always people get when they get dualistic and what we've interpreted dualistic to be. Division in this sense means I just split it to create another one of myself. Hold it. Don't get all crazy before I create another one of myself. You see what I mean? It doesn't mean that there's not going to be more after this division, but some are stuck there. Right? So when you have, now in English though, you see why the D still causes multiplication. Like obviously you can keep timesing and dividing 6 and all sorts of stuff and 9, and they keep going back into themselves from numbers levels because they only are the generative principles in division. So they're missing each other. So 6 in this sense would be missing 9. Then when you put 6 and 9 together, because now you just have to flip the symbol. When I was telling you, when they show you half of something, just flip it. Now you get that universal symbol of the yin and the yang, obviously, right? So also see then, let me get my eraser. I'll make sure there it is. Also see then the macro approach. Some people are already getting tired of being on Earth in the Zodiac. They're like, oh, take me to space. You are in space. Space in your mind, though, in your body and your soul. So if too much stuff is clogging things up, you can't pass. Let me show you why. Customs. Anytime you go to another country and you leave the country that you're from with your passport, by the way, you had to ask for permission to leave because you're a prisoner of war. And we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about the POW status that these idiots have cooked up for us. We asked to leave. Master, can I leave? Yeah, here's a passport. Or have you been in trouble? No, you cannot leave. Santa Claus, right? You've been naughty. So you have this thing that when you go to another country, the first place that stops you is called customs. And it's called that for a reason because the customs are your codes, your creeds, your modes, your frequency. All that is checked to make sure you can get in. Your diseases control your frequency, people. You got a disease, they're not going to let you in certain countries. No, you can't come here. If you're from certain countries, you're from America trying to go in North Korea, can't come here. You must disavow. Because the customs is always there to check. to make sure that the only things that are getting into these other worlds and gates, many of which, across the gate, many of which are very similar to each other, are the customs. That make sure that you know the codes, the customs, the modes, and the creeds to enter into those planes or to enter into those territories in the world. So let me show you how this works on the macro level. Some people say, oh man, let me get some water here. I want to go to space, or I want to go to the universe. I want to go where the beings are nice and there's no pain and we've already figured out how not to use plastic. I wanted to go there. How do I get there? Well, guess what? A long time ago, they had this classified that there was these guardians of the gate. This is a fear-based training. Guardians. That there's guardians at the gate and they got these huge swords and hammers, and big wings. And they prevent you from getting into these other worlds, especially the higher worlds. They guard the higher worlds. Now, humans are storytelling people, so of course they put a lot of sauce on it. Realistically, the universe has these buffers in between every dimension. There doesn't need to be someone physically there in a sense, even though everyone there that's on that frequency is guarding that frequency. But it's a simple law of the universe that you can't get into other frequencies unless you frequency match, go into harmonics. So that's what separates frequencies. So the ideas of guardians actually came from the idea of guides. Because they're actually the same thing, because when you think of guardians and you think of guides, and some of these words may be spelled wrong, by the way, because I match words up according to their syllables. But anyway, when you look at guardians and guides, they're really the same words. Because these guardians and guides, which later on became angels, and the next thing you know, people worshiping angels and all of that, actually were archetypes. Right? And now the negative archetype is the archon. He is or she is or Narkusa is the female version. They are the inverted version of a beautiful universe or innerverse, a nice body. They create companies and things that destroy bodies, McDonald's, etc. So the original concept, which is here, the archetype, was the mode that you had to change and be in order to get into that particular part. So let's say, for instance, you want to go up here. And my marker game is not on point today. Anyway, let me grab one of these markers. So I'll just grab this one. Let's say you want to be up here. Now, the codes, customs, conduits, and creeds for being here in these non-ethereal realms, to try to get to one, to attempt to climb this ladder, because this is what this is also, it's a ladder. So for you to attempt to climb to that ladder of that state, then you need to put yourself through doom, 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 doom. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because we've had many shows about that, of how to go to the Muladhara, Sarara, or whatever the names they're giving it, how to get to these different chakras. But it's because you stop doing or start doing certain things. This means you're just going into your biological computer and saying, okay, I need to stop eating this kind of thing. I need to stop listening to this. I need to turn off this kind of frequency. I need to change this around. I need to remove this. So what you're doing now is you're going through customs. Because customs are that you've agreed to do something so that you can get into this next area. Now, physically how that works out is if you go to customs and you got something that you can't cross with, they're going to take it right there. They're going to give you a choice. They're going to say either you leave it here or you can't come in. And then most people choose to leave it here. And they throw it in a bin and the person goes and they auction it off later. So you try to cross with something like a gun. It's in customs, they don't allow foreign guns from different places to go in. So it gets stopped there. You see what I mean? So it's the same concept, the same principle. So what happened is that originally we were on a strictly organic system. Every single point that we could visit had certain conditions that we had as archetypes. So they said, well, if you want to get up here, you're going to have to be like, and sometimes they would give it even a name. And this was like the superhero thing. You're going to have to be like Hercules if you want to be strong. And you're going to have to be like, and they say, well, what are the characteristics of this being? And then they would give you a list of what you would have to do to obtain that height. Because actually it would become you. As you moved into other frequencies, because you're everything, you just changed into another version of yourself. Now, here's what was discovered very early. You could actually keep going through them. Again, need some artists here. But you kept going through these worlds. Once you got the whole thing unlocked, continuously. There wasn't a point where you stayed in a world for what you think is 72 years, etc. No, you moved throughout the worlds just as when you go to sleep, you can move throughout worlds right from your dream world. That is basically a gate. And if you understand the customs beyond the next gate you're attempting to go into, you can assume that shape and that mode and go into that frequency. So, of course, there's a lot of prepping with the body that needs to be done. And this is what nature really had for us while we were going around chewing up all the animals and chewing up all this stuff that's not good for us. There were plants and things that basically they were in themselves like electricity. This is another thing that's been discovered about these plants is that they carry such a high vibratory frequency that the body changes to their vibratory frequency, and that's how you get into these altered states of consciousness, especially with things such as ayahuasca and things of that nature. So what it's really connected to is that nature, meaning that out here, there was compressed energy found in just a leaf of a tree that one could eat, and they got enough to project all through the inner self. And that was the big thing. So nobody was really on a lamb or on stasis frozen in a dense world as far as the ones that had expanded. So that's when the energy keeps moving. But then when you're learning, though, because by all means, many may be seeds just planted on this gigantic cosmic tree, you go through these worlds and you level up. And then eventually, when you understand, especially one of these worlds, and you master one world, it serves to allow you to be able to master the next very easy. And these became known as the 12 labors. Okay? Obviously that 12 has to do with why we have 12 months, why the clock is divided by 12, etc., etc. But these 12 labors corresponded to the 12 systems, okay, or the 12 orifices. And I saw that I was possibly spelling this word wrong earlier, so I think it's like that. But the 12 orifices of the body, meaning the pores, the nose, the eyes, the ears, every hole that has an intake has a gate. And that gate is your universe. And the frequencies that you're experiencing in this world are based upon the frequencies that each of your worlds are on. That's the only way that it could even come across you, because you've obtained some level of harmony with it. So now you can see why this news and this TV and all this suggests all the darkness, all the decay, all the death, and then why you seem to brush close to it at times, because it's a resonant frequency, right? So what happens is, though, is there's another misconception that because this is the low part, this is evil. Okay, this is the dark, the ignorant, blah, blah, blah. That's actually not how the system is set up. Major news flash here. I only have just these two colors here for today. Obviously, I need to get some more markers. But what you have here is, if you want to call this one positive, then this one will be negative. Okay? And what happens with the body in each of these worlds is each of these worlds are also set up on these polarities. And this becomes how it starts to really make you think about a lot of things. Because you'll see that just because an individual is supposedly in a higher state of consciousness doesn't make them some magnificent being.
as far as being on a harmonic level. Harmony is something that it needs to obtain, or else the other pole just becomes another opposite. It just becomes just the opposing force, not the birth from the opposing force. See, the only way is what you're seeing here with the system is the only way to actually allow this system to power up without ever getting stuck into one of these polarizations is to use the pole, the middle path, which is the harmonic path. It's not going into this, I'm the darkness, I'm the light type thing. You're totally expanded beyond even trying to put identifications on unlimited energy. The moment that we even start explaining energy, we already took power from it. That's what also I'm here to tell people is that the explanations are about to be over really fast. We're going to show people what's going on. We're going to do some movies, but we're going to be in action all the time about getting people aware of what's happening and what they can feel like when they're not subject to this division, stuck in polarized. We'll just say that, stuck in one of the poles. Now, here's another secret. Secrets within the words. In this area, there is somehow an engine. I'm going to make that an engine. This point right here, there is an engine. Right here. We'll call it one main generator. Okay? And this generator to you is known as Baal on your planet. In your medical books, your bowels. Okay? Now, they say that this horn god, let me show you how they mix it up in the etymology and all this stuff, and then they get everyone going. They say this horn god lives in the lower area and then masters over hell. Okay? And this is how, again, the system has been misinterpreted as if everything that is lower is hell. No. You think it's hell to be a butterfly? You think it's hell to be an eagle? But these beings, according to this system, are down here in it. You see what I mean? So what happens is there's polarizations. It's probably tough to be bacteria, especially the bad bacteria, bad virus. You gotta live like a virus. You see what I mean? So there are different states of consciousness. And that's really saying to us, okay, this kind of system is a myth in a sense where it is a riddle. They're trying to tell you that in the labyrinth, which is a maze, okay, any maze is journey like this, okay, in here there is a minotaur. Now, obviously, that same horned creature became associated with the inverted pentagram, right? And here they keep going with the lure. Yes, dangerous, devil, demon, right? Of course, it's that way for those who are eating these cows, especially the ones that they have today. It's pus and mucoid mucus and pus between the meat and the cheese, mucus and pus all in the person's bowel. So Baal has now become their lord. And he's mucus and pus. And he's got bad bacteria they call Bacchus. Bacchus is the lord too. He's the bad one. He's the god of junk and revelry. You drink and you eat all the crazy stuff. When you get drunk and all that, then it all goes into the system. And then now you become this individual. You see how they're playing the game? They love to make these creatures outside somewhere running around terrorizing folks. Really, they're inside terrorizing things, terrorizing the INNERVERSE. Okay? So then let's keep going with the Lord. Now remember, this is still a feminine symbol because it has to do with fertility, because this is the hearth of the body. This is where the heat comes from. This is why it was synonymous with hell, because hell became synonymous, was named after health. And the hygiene sign, hygiena, was the pentagram. And it was always drawn inverted by Pythagoreans. They call it the hygiene sign. Because what they're saying is that in your system, there is this place that has to keep this heat going to burn up the impurities. And if people think I took it too far, let me show you. High negative God up here. Right? You got a high negative God in your mouth. Some people think, well, I thought the higher worlds were the ones that were good. Okay, let me show you. high negative God in your mouth suggests that you should eat a cheeseburger. Okay? Now the mouth is up here, so strategically you would think it's higher. And this is why you'll see that all of it has to remain in balance, because it's not really a higher and lower thing. It's about in each center who is doing all of the controlling. Right? So if one of your polarizations is in just one of your orifices, if your ear, one of your right ear negative decides I want to listen to anything I want, then all the chakras will pay. Right mouth, negative chakra, whatever, decides, I want to eat this tonight. All of these chakras are going to pay. So if you look at this and you say, okay, the black hole, which I call it the mouth, you put anything in it, right? You put in the wrong thing, and then now this stuff comes all down through the system. You see here, knocking planets offline. Then when it finally gets to Baal, now guess what? Baal meant king or lord. King or lord. Excuse me, these markers are, this one's got to go. I gave up. Okay, king and lord. Now who's the king and the lord? You. So this means you then are here. Now, remember, you're everything, so you could be everywhere. But now, when it's time for you to feel it, because everything what hurts you the most, you feel the most. Who screams the most in this system? You become primarily in that arena or that frequency. Whatever gives you the most ailment or happiness, you become centered there more. Okay? That's why that's another key to how to keep the system balanced. So what happens is that the king or the lord is you. And so what happens is when you actually are not a good king and you actually have all of this, these bad planets and bad inclinations, and you keep feeding the systems things that knock them offline, when it's time to burn up the impurity of what you've consumed, there's no fire to do it. And it becomes fat. Fat is excess, non-burned fuel. If you actually go hungry, it'll start burning it. So you see how they can take you, and then again, because this is a generative principle, let me finish. This is a positive heat, even though they demonized it because of what you eat and what you do, so it's become true. But the positive heat of the body, if you have a free working bowel system, it actually makes the entire body flourish, because it is the key to the energy that is needed to actually open up or release the minotaur from the labyrinth. Who is the minotaur? I said it's the feminine principle. Okay, so these symbols also became synonymous within the ancient days, the serpent, right? Or the naga, right? So what they're saying, while they're still zoomorphifying and worshiping everything, is that in the coccyx of the spine, and we're running out of room here, but you see on the spine, there's a small area where they say we used to have a tail. There is 3 vertebrae in the coccyx that actually are like coiled together. So in a sense, they become a maze. And what is in those coils is, because they're like a disc, several discs, are your information of all of your existence. Like basically that, so you feel then when this is awake, all is self. So do you see why this became known as the devil, the devilish component? Because anything that can actually take you into an expanse of who you really are, or expanded level of who you really are, has been demonized. And so that's what you're dealing with on the planet, is that they'll take this knowledge and they'll take this information and then they'll turn it around, and it'll still mean a part of the truth. But in reality, it'll only mean some other babble that they have to teach. So I'm going to take a break here for a moment, just to make sure that I get to everyone's question. If you do have a question, you could type that in the chat box. And I'm also going to look at my notes to make sure that I covered everything in there. And then we're going to go ahead and finish off a little bit for just today, just so you can absorb the message that was spoken and that you can actually see for yourself, maybe rewind it again what it is that I'm talking about. So if everyone just give me a moment, I do have a baby to deal with, and I'll talk to you in just a moment. Okay, I'm back for it again. I do also have a baby here, and a new baby. And of course, new babies are always very animated. And actually, there's just been an amazing expanse for me, because when I moved over from doing, it's just been in itself, it's just been a complete growth. And I'll just leave it at that. Let me just go ahead and new baby. Okay, got to change this really briefly, but. Yeah, what I mean is that the child experience actually allows you to see that it shifts your mind in a sense. And I was talking about this on True Frequency Radio, but it actually shifts your mind to, instead of always wanting to run off to some other planetary system or something, you start thinking about how everyone else that is directly related to your biorhythm are going to fare also. So it adds more of this feeling of responsibility. And of course, there was a huge responsibility before the child, because I feel that same way with the resistance. But then you can imagine another increment of that. And that's really what I was saying also, where the anchor, or the being able to actually have your ground incorrectly. We'll call it that rather than an anchor, because an anchor is useful too. If you're going really far off and you need a tether to make sure that you get back, that's at times what's necessary when you go into higher states of consciousness. But remember, most of what has been talked about has just been talked about. And I guess I'll just sum today's show up. As you see with the system that I had here today, your body is the INNERVERSE. It's the one that has all the complex pieces. It's the one as they say, the spirit descended into it. It's the one that has the greatest mystery. Like, it's the one that is the most enigmatic and most difficult to understand. But when they send you outside looking for it, then you'll never find it. And that's exactly the story here of humanity. And it's a story that's easy to correct, because now you know. And the more people that actually know that their body and their mind and their soul and what they eat and what they put into it in the orifices, as we call the labors, actually govern what frequencies they're able to get into, then they'll see it as their responsibility to not only get into those frequencies, and that's why I said the responsibility is a big thing. You'll see that, it's up to me to decide when I'm going to get into the expanse of who I am. Not the next book, not the next show, not the next whatever, the next reply, the next answer to the question, because realistically now you've also been given a system that allows you to really decipher through anything. Most of the time, again, if it's a really occult symbol, first look at it and see if you're only looking at a reflection of yourself. That, somebody took another image of us and then made it in a two-dimensional symbol and then tried to give an explanation. And then a person became limited to that. And so that was also a big conversation that I had about 2 or 3 weeks ago, is that when you take this and you say this means man, or you take this and you say this means man, or you take this and you say this means man, or you take this and you say this means man, then what happens is that if a person begins to think that this is them and not seeing it as a metaphor or an instruction tool, then they can create a whole level of confusion for themselves. And that's why these symbols within themselves have been the gift and the curse of this world. It's basically the fire of Prometheus in itself, because it talks about regeneration. And as we said, this one has to be drawn with the extra cross there. It means regeneration. This one being drawn with its other inverted. Actually, they show how this casts a shadow of this. And they also show how this turns into this. And they show how this is intersecting points in these. So all the knowledge does hint back to, hey, we're talking about you, but we're giving you the inorganic explanation of it. Now you got the real thing inside. You are the living tree. All of the fruit that you produce is your responsibility to take care of. As that guy said on that recording, some people are dealing with things from trillions of lifetimes ago of their existence. If you're at the point of reasoning now, look at yourself and choose to reign over yourself in a just way. And that's the real thing. Your body is the real kingdom. If you can commit an act of genocide against yourself by eating something that you know will destroy one of your planets, you have made the same act that is actually happening on this planet. And that's also what is keeping Earth at a resonant frequency with us. Meaning what you're experiencing in Earth is something that's going on inside of us, whether it's suggested to us or not, whether we're eating it through our mouths, through our ears, through our eyes, through our pores, whether we're taking it in any kind of way. The reality is that we have to watch for ourselves the gates. We have to be the customs. Look, this is what you have to do when you come here. It's like the mission statement. If you want to expand into this, because there's 1,000 or 1,000,000 different tunnels inside of the body to go down that lead nowhere. It is indeed a maze. It leads just to another dead end. And you say, okay, I experienced that whole thing, but I didn't actually get to the generation source. Where is it? Now notice also in this world, they are hiding the generation source. They're hiding how our sexual behavior ties in directly to our current and our currency. So it's about realizing these things, even from the simplest level, actually getting that information to other people so that way you do your part in actually building things, building what we already exist inside though. Remember, like this is not something that you have to look at as you're actually going to help someone else, but you're not helping yourself. No, we're all inside of a planet. So any help you do into this planet is going to be help for all of us. So the secret, last thing, the key to the word INNERVERSE. And universe. And why they contain these components. Why do they contain a dualistic component? Anyone in the class? It's because the dualistic component always produces what? Division. Why is division produced? So that division ends up birthing its other half and becomes whole. Again, whole like a whole. It's even a circle. Okay, so what happens in between? Worlds that are in stasis, meaning that being stuck into one pole, one side, never realizing that your growth needs to take place, then you grow into that. Some people are wondering where the twin flame is. It's something that you bring about. And then what actually happens is this verse becomes just like it's always been. Inside of your body, surely the liver is not the heart. Surely the lungs are not the bladder. But do they not all exist in the same body? And when they work together and they're all looked out for and they remain in pristine condition, they communicate with each other through harmony. Hey, you can't eat that, but there's something else that you can eat. It tastes good too. But every time you just don't even think and you eat, it hurts us. So there's a part of these different parts of the body need to communicate with each other. And you need to say to yourself, what am I doing? And what is it doing to my universe or my innerverse? And remember, most of it starts in the mouth. That's why the mouth is the largest hole in the body, right? Look at the largest hole. So it's going to take in the most. It takes in smoke. It takes in food. It takes in drink. So it takes in vapor. So the mouth takes in pretty much a great deal of things. So it's going to be the one that you're going to need to look at most, the gate that you're going to need to stand in front of in your own, like I say, innerverse, so that way you can get things in order. So I want to say wholeness and balance vibration to everyone. Thank you 100% for tuning in. It's been, like I said, for me, just a fantastic year. I mean, there's so many things that I'm always doing. I just want people to also be able to feel the energy and to be able to get involved. So for me personally, that's where this next season 2, as I call it, comes in at, is because I'm going to be getting more people involved, and we're going to be doing so much more than is even being done now. And that's what I was saying. So that's going to be like the people, wow, because already a great deal is being produced. And so now we could just get to a level where we can times that by 5, 6, 7. Poof, then we'll be seeing that awakening a lot quicker. So, all right. So there is, doesn't appear to be one question here. There appears to be one question about whether the Ravens won the Super Bowl because the Ravens are associated with Ra. I can't even really say that. At this point, it's so loose with, those kind of games, you can't even really expect to get any type of etymological correspondence out of that could be accurate out of that. It's almost like going and using some lower form of divination system to give you some type of authentic explanation of what's supposed to be happening on the higher levels. And so that's what I would really say about that. At times, it would distort. And so that's pretty much it. Again, I wanted to say thanks to everyone, and we'll be talking soon. I'm going to be launching quite a few things off this week, but we do need those individuals that are coming here to be able to hold some of the load, because, of course, with all the new additions to the resistance, especially the new baby, there's definitely been some time shifting. But also at the same time, and I'll say this and I'll be done. That it's hard for me to disconnect that times from everyone, since I do still enjoy loving most being able to connect with individuals and give them the information, because obviously I'll come into this information and sometimes I'll be experiencing something in my world, and then I'll go and sit down and I'll just be like, okay, give me a moment. I'll say that inside of myself, like, give me a moment and let me think clearly, like, what's really going on. And that's when this week was able to really start going into the innerverse more and start seeing the customs and the gates, and that it was still up to me to decide if I wanted to go back into frequencies that were so ethereal that they didn't really involve much of our Earth existence, or if I wanted to learn how to expand and do both, meaning being able to stay in a high vibratory frequency, which is really easy when you're around nobody. Think about it. When you go out and you're in the woods and you're already tapped into yourself, it's very easy to stay in a high vibratory frequency. No challenge there, really. Only challenge yourself. So but when you come into this reality, then you start dealing with people, you start dealing with electronics, you start dealing with, taxes, and you're dealing with all these different things, then all of a sudden, boom, it's at you again. But this time, it's the experience, though. Because remember, the first time when you went in, that was the training. Wasn't nothing happening, though. Nothing was really taking place that wasn't going on inside of you. And so now in the external world, which we've had to learn now, how to do the ebb and flow, that we can't just discard any principle, because it will become the regenerative principle for us. If we take ourselves apart any kind of way, we will have to put ourselves back together before we understand who we are. And so that's all I'm really saying. Wholeness.